Welcome to the FMCG Guys podcast. I'm Daniel Torres and here in London today. Very exciting week. We saw a lot of friends from the industry, recorded a podcast 2 days ago with Proper Snacks, and I'm here at my partner's Kin's office in Blackfriars, sitting with probably one of the most authorized voices in the retail media. I don't know if it's accepted or deny that.
I'm certainly an enthusiast.
Okay, there you go. Good. I like the political correctness, the diplomacy, but it's probably a very familiar face to a lot of people that are actually watching or listening, because if you're listening, you can also see this one on YouTube. It's no other than Paul Dahill, who's the MD Sales EMEA at retail media ad tech leader Koddi.
That's right.
How are you doing?
Very good, very good. It's been a crazy Q1, lots of travel,
Yeah.
which is good, especially Germany. Germany is really exploding at the moment, so
And in retail media?
very much so, yeah. I was there this week in Berlin, Dusseldorf. I was in Hamburg, I think, next week. So yeah, it's getting pretty intense, which is good.
Was there like a delay in like their development of retail media if you compare it to the UK?
Well, certainly from an events perspective, I think you've had the classic kind of OMR, Mexico, D3 cons, but I think now there's a sense that maybe more retail media specific events are appropriate. I think there's the requirement for it. And then Germany always has that complexity, whereas, there's not necessarily a central city, so they need multiple events.
Which is wonderful, the way that they've built the country in terms of being decentralized.
Yeah.
It's very good. But yeah, to do events or to do what I was doing, well, sometimes I do it now as well, recruitment.
Yeah.
Well, it was good for recruitment in the way that it's very difficult to find talent.
You certainly get to see the country, and you experience the train service.
Yeah, well, which has a lot of issues these days.
Yeah, let's not get into that, but yeah.
No, I used to go to Germany. It was like before COVID, with my recruitment business, it was like the number one market that I had for sure. So I was there all the time, and the trains were like practically always worked very well.
Yeah.
But yeah, you said you wouldn't want to go into that. So so you mentioned that you're a retail media enthusiast, and I consider you to be like, one of the people that knows the industry more. What's your background? How did you evolve into what you currently are?
Thank you for asking. Just to give a quick summary, because I don't think people want to spend too long on that. They can go look at my LinkedIn. But it's important to say that I spent 5 years in out of home. And I think that's important when we think about in-store, and how in-store, when we especially put screens on the front of stores, and are kind of competing almost with those businesses. So I kind of grew up in...
And what were you doing in out of home exactly?
Yeah, so, I was in the sales teams, selling into agencies, etc.
Like selling like adverts?
Yeah, so it's JC&Co. One of the big ones. And, I was working eventually in the Premier team, which is those very large executions that you see, in roundabouts, things like that, right? So there, and then was in digital quite early. Again, there's relevancy there. I was in the days where it was sales houses, where publishers didn't understand digital, so they started to outsource their digital inventory into a kind of it wasn't so much a network, it was a sales house who would go and rep them. Again, the similarities there in retail media, where there are many retailers who say, let's outsource our retail into these kind of centralized sales houses. So the similarities there. I think you see that so much in retail media that, we've kind of solved these problems before. We've seen this pattern. So then I spent some time at Amazon, very early stages. There was no return on ad spend at that point. It was display only. There was no sponsored products.
Wow.
Which is crazy to think about. So, hey, would you like to advertise? Great. Can I see the sales uplift? No. That was fun. So a period of time there. And then probably the biggest success was working at Hook Logic, right, which is like the OG of sponsored products in many ways, which was lots of fun. We were acquired by Criteo, so moved into a leadership position at Criteo, but very excited to be talking a bit more about Koddi.
Today. Absolutely. When did you think that you properly went into retail media? When you went Hook Logic?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. That's a good question, because I was at Amazon, right? So surely that's retail media. But I think the difference was, and this is a very good question, because
only good questions on this podcast.
Well, exactly. No, but I think that's an interesting one because we weren't attributing back to sale at that point. Was it retail media or just a publisher? Right? And really, it was.
Yes.
I was competing against other publishers because there was no sales, there was no addressable audience within it, very little targeting above and beyond the context that you're in on the page. So really, was it actually retail media or not? There's a question there. So I feel like it was hook logic. We were definitely using the term retail media in those hook logic times, which is like, what, 2018?
When practically nobody was saying retail, or was a very niche term.
Right. I mean, we could argue about...
We'll go into it.
Yeah, we'll get into that, yeah.
Yeah, we like a good argument. And with the experience that you've had, why did you decide to join Koddi? Because I think that someone like you, knowing the industry like you know it, when you join a company, you're kind of they're placing a bit on you as much as you're placing a bit on them as well.
That's right. It's a big question. I think, so the way Koddi structures its organization and we operate commercially, we're able to say yes to our partners in a way that I've not seen before. So what do I mean by that? So in the technology space, the demands of one retailer versus another retailer versus another platform that you might be dealing with, they're all going to have certain requirements which are distinct to their organization. And from a resource perspective, on the technology side, it's very difficult to be able to, is that actually on our roadmap going forward? Are we developing in that direction? Are we going to have to delay? When can we actually meet that? At Koddi, I've been really surprised about the number of, the team, the support that goes around every client. They really feel that they have that kind of strategic support around them, and things do get developed for those individual retailers, and that's
on time.
On time.
Wow.
On time, yeah.
That's the thing, is a chicken and egg thing in tech, that sometimes
it can be.
You have to build the product as you're taking on a new client, and you have to kind of rush into it, no?
So we kind of think of it as every client has a seat at the table from a product development perspective. So, your opinion does matter, and those things will be developed, right? And that's kind of how we operate. And that's not something in my experience I've seen to the same extent before, which can cause quite a lot of frustrations in the vendor, retail media network relationship.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of it. But also I've seen over the period of time, and I'm sure we'll get into this phrase, commerce media networks, right? And that I think the problems that we're solving here are bigger than simply within retail, right?
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that attracted me with Koddi is it already has established experience, in some of these other verticals, coming from a travel kind of background. Q-commerce has very different needs. Auto sites, publishers have very different needs. So that kind of ability it's kind of interesting, right? It's different sorts of conversations you're going on, I was at an event, as I said, in Berlin this week, talking with, cruise lines, talking with airlines, talking with credit card companies. It's really interesting where this space is heading.
Yeah, and it seems like Koddi is able to be a good ad tech solution for both these more commerce areas, travel, for example, but also in retail, where you have some big accounts as well.
Yeah. I mean, we have that kind of experience. It's not like we're sort of net new.
Yeah.
We have existing stories we can kind of lean into and experience in those different verticals.
Yeah. And probably one area can learn from the other as well, no? I imagine.
Yeah, big time. I mean, certainly I think, within the travel space, right? Cruise ships can learn from hotels and can learn from airlines. One of the things that I've been picking up, which kind of surprised me, is that the lowly USB stick in these other verticals, it has more of an impact than you think in terms of, so what I mean by that is, we're used to things being delivered maybe from a programmatic perspective, et cetera, but many of these newer verticals are still struggling with, older infrastructure. And the idea of just being able to link it to, broadband to be able to deliver an ad onto a screen in a hotel room or into a cabin, much more complex than you think. When you're dealing with, well, what's the broadband quality like? And often it's a USB stick getting stuck in. Like when you're on an airline and we all see the same ads, and it rotates around. So that's changing, but yeah. So I think, again, the sort of how retail media is developed. Some of these other verticals, they have huge potential, but there's some significant infrastructure changes that need to happen and be developed.
Yeah, because they were just the requirement were like very much lower at the end of the day,
Yeah.
in terms of like,
Maybe the business case isn't as obvious in order to make those changes to the infrastructure and the costs involved. Yeah.
Exactly. Well, an exciting space. And retail media, we mentioned it's like kind of a niche area. It was a niche area.
It was a niche.
It started terming it, and now it's obviously very mainstream. And sometimes there's these so-called experts saying the retail media has always been there, and then I hear some other so-called experts saying that retail media is only 6 years old. So is it old or new?
That's a good, I mean, this is one of these questions in our space that, like, outside of our world, no one's actually interested in. It is a bit of a debate. I don't know. I was on a panel with Moritz. You know Moritz, right? Moritz, he's Ahold, Moritz?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Got lots of opinions on things. He's a great guy. So he was talking about, on this question, could you, if you were like a fairly small retailer, could you launch a retail media business without a loyalty program? Right? And this was an interesting topic because therefore it's not addressable what you're doing. But I think where retail media progressed from more traditional shopper-based marketing, which has had loyalty programs for some time, don't get me wrong, but the ability to do that because of the growth of e-commerce just changed everything. Everything suddenly became addressable. And you don't need a loyalty program, right? Which is why you think about Walmart. Walmart's one of the famous ones that doesn't have a loyalty program, right?
Wow, mind-blowing. No?
Yeah, I know.
They don't have a loyalty program.
No, they don't. And it's surprising, right? And then we had a whole discussion about what is a loyalty program, is like Prime, is that a loyalty program? Or is that a subscription service? Is it a tax?
I was also speaking with someone in Ocado and they didn't really have like much of a loyalty program.
Right, because they kind of don't need to in some ways, right? Maybe they do, right? So like provide extra services, a bit like a Prime, like a subscription service might make sense, right? Cheaper delivery, etc. But fundamentally, they know us as Ocado shoppers.
Yeah, so probably my conclusion is that retail media is kind of always been here, but it's changed a lot in the last 6 years. Would that be fair?
I think so. I think I think of it quite a lot as an evolution. Of what went before. And you have to understand what went before because again, there are things we can learn from different, certainly from Western stories, etc.
That pattern that you mentioned at the end of the day, like seeing the underlying pattern of like media publicity, how it's all evolved, and you can kind of see.
Yeah, I see. You mean going back to what we discussed with exactly. There's so many similarities there as well, and there's still so many exciting things happening. But there's also, I think, and maybe we'll get into this, but there's a sense that maybe we think of the space being more advanced and sophisticated than it actually is. I think that's something that's worth kind of like pausing on for a minute. So it's certainly our job as as technology partners to make sure that we're on that journey and helping enable, perhaps is a good way of thinking about it, retailers when they are advancing.
Enable, advising as well.
Certainly both of those things. So we did a report with Forrester recently that I'd recommend people taking a look at. If you just Google sort of commerce media report, Forrester Koddi. And is
this online?
It is, yeah.
Okay, we'll leave it on the show notes.
Okay, great. Yeah, right. It's a substantial report, and it talks not just about retail media, but the wider commerce media space. And there was an interview from Forrester. They handled it. So Forrester interviewed over 100 retailers and then 300 different commerce media networks, right? Across different verticals, finance, airline travel, etc. that we talked about. And what was interesting, I've got like a couple of stats that came out. When asked about are they able to activate, measure, optimize across from an omni-channel perspective, only 12% from Forrester's perspective, met the threshold of these are advanced, these are kind of trailblazers, only 12%. So again, there's a huge kind of like potential here, right, from a development perspective. And then one of the things that one of the big pain points I hear from speaking to retailers especially is, Paul, we have, maybe one kind of system for display. We have a different system for sponsored products. We have a spreadsheet to handle our sampling, right?
Yeah.
Or our cardboard in store.
Yeah.
Maybe we have a different setup for our digital. Maybe we've got a different setup for our audio. All of these things we need to log into, to activate, to optimize, and then to be able to report from. So when Forrester said, do you have any kind of centralized management of your, your proposition, only 16% of commerce media networks have it all centralized in one place. So again, the reality is
low-hanging fruit.
You could say that. You could say that as potential.
So if you take a fixed picture of where the industry is at right now, you mentioned like taking a fixed picture. Where do you think retail media is at right now?
I think retail media needs an overhaul. I think we are at an inflection point with the advances in technology on one side and some of the legacy systems and operational norms that it need a reset, right? It is time for that overhaul. And I think there are kind of 5 things that are driving that in the industry right now. So the first thing is around retail media is showing up in more unexpected places than ever before, right? So we've always expected to kind of see it in store, right?
Yes.
Cardboard, etc.
That's like the old retail
Yeah,
media.
exactly. Shelf wobblers, etc. And now I think we're increasingly used to seeing sponsored products and display, etc. But the proliferation of offsite, I was watching Mr. Beast with with my kids yesterday. Every ad on Prime now has the little link to buy now, the fairy item on it. On Amazon Prime is an example, right? So same thing with other retailers leaning into connected TV, right? There are things going on in the US there where you can now have it's retail media powered ads that are going on. We're seeing it within chatbots. So, for example, I'm on Amazon and Rufus, right? I'm asking various questions and there are product recommendations that are appearing in there. So other retailers are trialing those tools as well. So we're starting to see, we've already seen like with ChatGPT, right? The introduction of ads over there. So all these are various different touch points that we now need to be prepared for rather than thinking, okay, it's some in-store cardboard, it's this. Tesco, I was at an event and they were showing, the kind of chart of all the different channels and products that you can buy from Tesco Media. And there's like 50 on there, so I think that's changed things.
Yeah.
Managing that complexity, not only from the retail media network's perspective, but also an agency or a brand trying to navigate that and think, well, how's my reporting going to look? So I think that's a fundamental change that it's time. The way we're approaching dealing with those at the moment isn't going to work in the long term. It's just far too complex. The second thing is about winning moments. So we hear this a lot in marketing more generally, right? Those touch points. How can I make sure I'm the brand that's chosen in that point? Mm-hmm. So the way we think about that is, and this is, I think, especially for brands or advertisers that may be watching, is just so much work that you need to do beforehand, so much preparation if you are going to win that moment.
Yeah.
So depending where the consumer is in that journey that may be powered from a retail media network, do you have the right kind of products available? Do you have them in stock? Do you have the right kind of message at that point? What stage of discovery are they at? And are you working with the retail media network to make sure those various assets are there? So I think there's a lot of work to be done in preparation if we're going to be winning moments, especially in that concept of, which leads on to my kind of next point, which is...
Is there like a typical pitfall that you see in terms of winning moments?
I think there's going to be.
Okay.
I think there's going to be.
Be careful.
So I was at an event with Marika from About You.
Fashion.
Now on by Zalando, I think. And, she was talking about how the product detail page is developing. So this is a little tactical. So just coming away from the high level, just into an example perhaps of that sort of winning moments and places. So if we're imagining a world now where more of our kind of search and discovery behavior is happening within an LLM, it's unlikely in that world that I'm going to go to a search results page.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I'm likely going to be delivered straight to the product detail page. Well, that's fine, but all of us have used, LLM tools, and actually the results aren't always exactly what we're looking for. And that becomes a challenge because the retailer knows the consumer probably much better, certainly for this product search that they're doing. So what Marika was talking about is how they're starting to kind of prep their suppliers, their advertisers, for the fact that you're going to start to see some of your competitors much more and again, this isn't policy from About You, but it was just, he was talking about it on stage, just more broadly, I think, from an opinion, is that because the consumer is going to sort of skip a stage and land directly on, this product detail page for this sparkling water. But I, as the retailer, I know that the price point of this particular one isn't going to suit Daniel as a shopper. So I know he's never going to purchase this. So what I'll be doing is I'll be saying, I've identified it's Daniel coming in, and the LLM has brought him directly to this product detail page. This isn't a product.
So basically you see sponsored ads of the competition
100%.
on your PDP.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, Amazon, right?
Yeah.
It's already like that kind of experience, right? Shoppers who looked at this also looked at this. Many retailers, and we're already doing this stuff, but many are not, right? And it's sometimes from a brand perspective, especially I think in that kind of beauty, high-end fashion, very much like I want to own the product detail page, right? I don't want competitor brands on that. Well, I think that this world that we're moving to is going to change that and put more pressure on that kind of view. So that is,
and the PDP also needs to be, apart from attractive for like the eyes of the consumer, attractive for the quote-unquote eyes of the agentic searches, no?
Exactly. So Samsung, we're talking at an event. I've been at a lot of events recently. But it's good stuff, So Samsung,
Hey, we're learning things.
So it seems like
not a given.
Yeah. All I'm doing is providing a summary of all my events. So Samsung, we're talking about, and you can go and check it on their site. So if you look at the product detail page now of a laptop on Samsung, and then you scroll down the page to the various little drop-down boxes, the data is now tabular.
What does that mean?
So rather than saying this product has these kinds of dimensions and does blah, 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 now it's size, length, width, etc.
Wow.
Everything is now presented in a table format. I mean, it's done in a nice enough way so that, a human eyes are seeing it. But if you look through it, you'll realize everything is now tabular. And Samsung, he was saying specifically they've made this change because LLMs read data in this format better than if it's just written as a long line of text.
Interesting. And that's on the Samsung website?
Yeah, for to consumers.
Okay. Well, one to look at.
Yeah, so I mean, there's changes like that are coming. And then a couple more that I think are major changes. I think the next one is around measurement expectations. So we talked before about that complexity with, 50 different elements up there. But I think there's something around, do you remember before I was talking about our expectations of using LLMs as consumers and how quickly we can get data?
Yeah.
I was talking to some people recently and I said, who here gets frustrated when they ask a different department for something and it takes the same amount of time that it used to take, and you think, I probably could have done this myself in an LA. It might not have been perfect, but I could have got this out quite quickly. So our expectations, even as users of technology, has changed so much in terms of the speed that we expect. And I think when it comes to measurement, when it comes to that crunching of data, and this really leads into that fifth one that we're seeing here, which is around the bottleneck around operational capacity isn't going to be acceptable anymore. It shouldn't be a blocker.
So what are the typical bottlenecks?
Well, one of the things that I often hear from retailers is, okay, I have 2,000 advertisers and realistic potential suppliers, let's call them, right? Right, as a grocer retailer, something like that. I mean, many more, right? But as an example, right? Realistically, we probably speak frequently to about 80 of them.
Yeah.
And we just don't have the capacity to deal with the rest, right? We maybe built a self-serve platform and said, here you go, right? So there's the solutions around it. But it's not ideal in the sense that they're not being serviced appropriately, right? So again, those sort of bottlenecks, I think, can be solved in many ways with this sort of, with the technology that we're seeing today. One of the things we've been working on is introducing LLMs into reporting. So saying, as an operator, because many retailers are still operating on a managed service basis. So what are the bottlenecks in my February campaigns? Which are the 5 campaigns that I need to have a look at? And then can you flag the reasons why they are and tell me the best thing that I should be doing about it? And then tell me that every Monday morning.
Got it. Yeah. And that's the thing, like, well, I mean, let me put it this way. I think that retail media would gone like from a kind of feeling of cold rush, where it seemed like every retailer could just make more money with a huge margin, to a moment where of like complexity and sophistication and higher demand. No,
I think there's something there, right? If we're going to get to the next level, then we need to be leveraging some of these other pieces of technology. There's also that kind of linear relationship between revenue and resource.
Yes, exactly.
I'm not sure that exists to the same extent anymore.
Revenue was coming in, right? Because like brand wanted to advertise, but now it's time to report back what you were saying. You need to like prove that that the numbers are there and that it's working, and that means labor, right? Or technology to do better reporting more often.
Well, I mean, it's not that difficult. I'm sure that other vendors would say this to build something that connects into, like a Google Doc or something, or into a PowerPoint that says, here is my reporting, here is my piece for, what is this, Cano? As an example. So pull me a report, and then it builds the post-campaign analysis report and then sends it over via your CRM directly to that. The technology already exists to do that.
Go back to a fundamental problem that you mentioned before, which is having like a different way of having like in-store, off-site, on-site. Like if you have all these different data points to put it together for yourself and then report it back to your advertisers
it's the infrastructure piece. You've got to get that in place.
And on the measurement piece, it's basically, I think that you mentioned that like the expectations of advertisers have outgrown like the tools that teams in the retail can actually use, also because I think that retail media, there's definitely a case for conversion, which is like the typical thing, but also for brand building, like upper funnel type of activation. But whenever you hear, or nearly always, when you hear like examples of campaigns on retail media, the bottom line is, and we sold more in the next month, which is just like conveys like just conversion.
You're right.
So that's another interesting one.
Exactly. If we are going to be capital M for media, retail media, rather than capital R retail, we're going to have to not only talk about how you can run upper funnel campaigns, but also perhaps demonstrate that more to the industry about this is the change that we made, this is how we shifted the needle, etc. But at the same time, you kind of can't get away from the superpower of retail media is being able to track it through to sales. So it's no surprise that people still interested, and how many sales came as a result.
And we all like to see the numbers go up quickly, don't we?
Right. I mean, there was a topic recently which is a little controversial, especially for any brands or advertisers listening, but that bearing in mind we can track in this space through to sale, and that can be applied to connected TV and whatever it may be, right? In these various like offsite channels as well. Is retail media actually underpriced?
That's what Gary Vee says, it's underpriced.
I think there's something there. It feels like, How else are you tracking this, with these other platforms? It's those kind of metrics that you talked about, but at the same time, I kind of also want to know, did it change, did it shift the needle on sales? So yeah, it's a tricky one.
No, because there's also a case to say with retail media, you can actually, even like upper funnel campaigns, you can prove it better than on TV.
Right.
Depending on which, how you measure it. So what, with all these points that you said,
Yeah.
what can retailers or commerce media networks do about it?
Do about all of it?
Yeah, well, like, what can they do about it? Like, how can they approach all these like tectonic changes?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's certainly the piece around the fundamentals. Getting the back end in a good place. I think that's a key thing. I think you shouldn't, certainly. I'm naturally going to say this as a technology vendor, but your technology shouldn't be holding you back. I'm thinking we spend a lot of time with our partners thinking about, from a financial perspective, okay, top down, bottoms up, how are we going to help you get to where you need to be? What changes could be made to your program? What have we seen working well elsewhere? How can we help you drive efficiencies within your business? So I think these are some of the questions, certainly from a technology perspective, that I'd be asking about. I mean, it depends where you are, right? Depends where that retail media platform or program is on their journey. There's still conversations that go on around, okay, my buying team, and my retail media team, and how are we being compensated, and which number is it rolling up to? Where is this thing sitting? Is it sitting under the CMO? Is it going directly into the CEO? Is it a separate organization? So there's still many fundamentals that I'm sure you've covered off on this wonderful podcast before.
But it's always like it's always an interesting one to talk about. And I think there's something that maybe isn't that talked about, which is really like, in order to like tidy the house, because you need to tidy the house before you can do anything.
Yeah.
You have to take maybe a short-term hit. No, and like maybe like say no to some advertisers in order like to like do a bit of an overhaul or a restart. No, isn't that a bit of a case?
Yeah.
I mean, at least you need an investment.
Yeah. So yeah, you're right. Right. So so retail media, not to get too much into it, right? But retail media technology is server side, right?
Yeah.
So typically, rather than being you can take a client side. So what I mean by that, for the less technical people, you can stick a bit of code easily on your site that can tell you some things, but it's not the best solution, right? Something you can do, but it's not normally recommended for a number of reasons. There might be issues with like ad blockers impacting it. There might be a data, like what's happening with that data. There's certain controls around it. So normally most technology is implemented server side, which means you as the retailer have total control over what data and information is going directly to your vendor partner. But innately that takes a bit more resource. So there's a sense sometimes that I'm either working with a homegrown system that is kind of okay, right? Or it's maybe something built on my CMS from my content management solution, but it's not ideal and it's causing me lots of problems from a resource perspective. Or I've got a kind of legacy ad server in place that I've been working with for a long time. Maybe there's some frustrations with it. But in order to shift to, a more advanced system, there is going to need to be resource requirements. And that's the conversation that we're often having to have with partners, which is, how can you build exactly this business case to say, okay, we're going to need to pull some technical resource in to work on this project. Sure, maybe you could outsource it, right? Maybe you could ask your vendor to lean into that. But ultimately, there is going to be some requirement of additional resource being utilized. What's the business case for that? And what's the long-term impact on that? And I think those are the sort of grown-up conversations that you have to be having with partners.
Yeah. And is there a pattern? I love patterns, by the way. Is there a pattern that you see in terms of like retailers, what type of hurdles they find inside to make that happen?
How do you mean?
Hurdles like, is it a budget thing? Is it like more internal alignment and culture thing?
in order to secure the
With the
resource.
retailer side, yeah.
To secure the resource. It's a great question. I think it depends. I think it depends on all of those things. How much is this still seen as a initiative from the top, right? And we're going to continue to invest in this because you're asking for investment ultimately.
Yeah.
To get is the business case been made appropriately? Right?
Yeah.
That's the fundamental question there. Yeah. Are we actually going to see this change? From a relevancy perspective, we recently did a kind of pooling of when we put our relevancy engine, which is different to every single provider. On average, it was about a 50% increase in engagement rate, so CTR. So there's something there, right? Those are the kind of numbers that vendors will try and help and work with partners on to say, and here's how we can build a business case out the other side of it. That's realistic, right? Based on data. So I think that's part of it, making sure the business case is there, that you've got buy-in from above. But there are many competing questions for that resource, right? So that maybe the CRM also is a little broken. We talked about the fundamentals before. So perhaps that IT team is working on that. So this is part of the reason why, as a vendor, when you're working on retail media projects, this tends to be a kind of long
sales process.
Sales process, yeah. Which you've just got to understand.
Going if you're doing it well, you're going very deep into how a retailer is working, right?
Right.
And it's more than just the retail media side. Another thing of maybe more a state of the nation of retail media, and I think we're going a bit more into retail, maybe getting a bit philosophical.
Oh my gosh.
Come on.
Well, I study philosophy at university.
There you go.
That's a little known fact about me.
There you go.
Yeah, so they didn't have any jobs available as a philosopher, so unfortunately, that didn't work out.
You never do.
Yeah, Socrates was busy. Yeah,
just Plato and Socrates already.
They were covered. Yeah. No internships available.
So the question, well, if you found your place in retail media philosophy, which is good.
Thank you. Thank you.
Maybe we should do a symposium or something of retail media philosophy.
Let's do it. Yeah, I feel like this is.
We're just giving away all these paid eggs, so I'll keep my mouth shut. No, but what I wanted to ask you, will AI and agentic shopping make retailers irrelevant?
No. I saw something interesting the other day, which was talking about the fact that you've kind of been able to buy directly via Facebook previously, right? So you could be served something within Facebook and you could click and buy within Facebook, right? So no, we're not really doing, in fact, they've got rid of it.
Yeah.
So interesting. Google, right? We're in Google, it's a search engine. We make searches, loads of stuff that Google shows me is 100% relevant to what I'm looking for, right? And they know a bit about me. Don't pretend that Google don't, right? They have a whole bunch of data, my Google Maps, etc., my emails, you name it, right? They show me absolutely relevant products. Do I click and buy directly within it?
No.
So there's a lot of arguments to say some people will, some certain purchasers will, and we need to, as technology vendors, be enablers to make sure that you're searchable, you're relevant within that there could be a way that your partners might be able to compete against each other, linked to you. So if you're John Lewis as an example, and you've got someone searching for headphones, how can you enable your partners to be able to not be only the most relevant headphone that's featured in that LLM result, but also maybe they can compete against it in a retail media framework, right, that we're used to. So those things will happen. That will be part of the story. But I think retailers do a really good job of kind of creating an experience. Not all, right? My Temu experience could probably be improved. But, I mean, it's cheap. But, that's...
But it's like that. What is your value? Value can be price, value can be convenience, it can be quality, right?
Right, yeah, very much so. I mean, also, I'm at a stage of my life where, I don't know. John Lewis, I'm a big fan of. I know you were with Georgia, I think it was. Yeah, she's great. Yeah. I love that whole experience, right? Yeah. And that whole concept I'm doing their podcast again now, right? It's brilliant. You've got married, you had the wedding list, absolutely correct. And then, you had children and you bought the cot there, 100%. Yeah. And then the bunk beds, correct, from John Lewis, all the way through.
And that's the value that I think that these good department stores provide.
Yeah.
Is that like it just saves you time ultimately, and you get like they.
But you rate it.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's curated.
It's interesting like how contradictory some of these things are, because at the end of the day, what ChatGPT is doing is curating a list of products for you.
Yeah, you're right.
That are more appropriate.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I'm taking the kids to Amsterdam next weekend.
Yeah.
And they're like teenagers, so what should I do over these 3 days? And it curates a little,
Yeah.
if anyone's got any tips.
I'm a bit of a hater of planning trips on ChatGPT personally.
Oh yeah, you think it's too generic?
Is that I always try to like contrast and like did it like skip so many. First I don't like the tone it has, and
Yeah.
and then some recommendations and all. It's just like
I blame the user. I think you need to get better at
prompting.
prompting. Yeah,
Secret is in the prompt.
it always is.
Yeah. And one thing that you mentioned, if you've gone to all these retail media events, were brands there?
Huh. Sometimes, I think, yeah. So, for example, I'm attending MadFest in Manchester. They do MadFest North, as well as
Up north.
Yeah. And I think they do quite a good job of leaning into media agencies and into brands and talking. We talk about winning moments. This is a topic that comes up quite frequently. So, and I tend to find the events that have quite a advertiser focus, like listening, what are your concerns? Yeah. Probably me selling like it's underpriced. It's probably not one of the things they want to hear.
Wow.
But I do find like that's the most interesting piece, where they're saying this is what we've heard from our consumers. This is what we're trying to achieve from our product perspective. This is what we need from our partners. So I think that's where it gets interesting, and then vendors tend to be the bottom.
But I feel like a lot of times, too many times, like the brands are not there in the debate, and at the end, that's where the money is coming from. No? What do you think within all this context of change? What advice would you? Well, we have a lot of brand listeners. It's actually our biggest contingent. What advice would you give them on how to approach?
Be demanding.
Be demanding.
Be demanding.
Yeah.
I mean, I honestly, what we've been talking about in terms of like your expectations as an individual when you're curating a list or whatever it is, there is absolutely no reason today that those partners shouldn't be able to do that, right? Who was I talking to? An agency. I'm going to get into trouble for this. I can see. Who said, we're still chasing up post-campaign analysis reports, right? We have to chase these things. That should not be the case.
No.
That should not. If that is the case, I understand why.
Yeah.
It's because the retailer is under resource pressure. I totally get it.
Yeah.
But it's because they're operating in a way where this is inefficient, right? Pulling this report, if it's taking that long, it's time to say, okay, we need to look at the back end. We need to look at our processes here. This needs to be improved. Sometimes I think that that operational bottleneck, where we're kind of underestimating the impact that could be having on your business, right?
Yeah.
And I think that then all comes back into the brand to say, okay, now I want these deep. Expectations should be higher, I think.
Yeah, I agree. It just
I apologize to my retail media network. But
let's see what else it is. Thank you, Paul. That will be the state of the nation, Hugh Paul. It's just a promise, honestly. And tell them the uncomfortable truths that maybe they don't want to hear. And what about consumers? Because
I love this topic.
Yeah.
I love this topic.
Is it like consumers have to adapt to like the reality of advertising being everywhere?
Look, it might be because I'm a grown-up. I don't know, right? But a couple of anecdotes on this, right? So years ago when I was at another vendor, and I remember I was stood in front of the team. They were a young team, right? And they were talking about, I think I was talking about Google Maps or something like this. And I said, oh yeah, now you can see this is all sponsored within here. They were groaning, they were whatever generation it is. I lose track, right? They were groaning. Yeah, and I said, hold on a minute. I said, well, okay. So from now on, it is 20 euros, £20 a month for Google Maps. Who here wants to pay that? And like no hands go up. Okay, well that's why advertising. I feel like we have to continually explain the fact that the reason this thing is free is because of the ad content that's in it. This is the ecosystem that we're in. So the way I think about this, and I make this case quite strongly, as you can see, is so when I was at Amazon, it was, start with the customer and work backwards. Okay, so getting free returns is cool, right? It's great, right? But it actually costs the retailer money, right? We understand this, right? When you're in this world, that's why they look at models where they begin to charge, etc. I think, is ASOS have a charging model now? Or Zara certainly does, etc. Right? So there's all these businesses are looking at that because it's a problem, especially in Germany, right? Where there's like massive. Do you know about this?
No.
Oh my God, it's insane. You should look at the return rate. It's almost culturally in Germany. You just always order more than you need, and then you try it on at home, and you do this. So yeah, you can look.
Would imagine them to be more eco-conscious, no?
Oh, yeah, maybe. But there we go. There we go.
There.
So my point being is that these things are great for us as consumers.
Yeah.
But they cost money. And I don't think that connection has been made, that the reason we're doing retail media, the reason it is a cost, it's a profit center, isn't just to recognize that on the balance sheet and go, fantastic, now we have a lot of cash flow. It's to reinvest that back into the business from a development perspective, exactly the things that I've just been talking about from a technology perspective, or for things outside of retail media that are great for customers. And that's part of that ad experience.
Is it like paying taxes, no? That if you want like public school system, NHS, etc., somebody has to take cut for free. Exactly. In record. So we have this question that we ask all our guests, and since this is surprisingly your first appearance on the podcast, which is mind-blowing considering that we've known each other for like 3 years.
This is right. Maybe longer than that.
Yeah. We'll have to chat about that. Yeah, sure. I'll have to
definitely some shop talks.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But if you went back to your younger self when you were starting your career, with everything that you've learned until now, what would be that piece of advice you give yourself?
I was thinking a bit about this. So I was with Catalina at Volt, depending where you're from. And she was saying that, she said, as a person, I don't cry over spilt milk, right? And I was thinking, what does she mean by that, right? It's a phrase in most languages, I think, right? She said it's a Colombian phrase. So, yeah, it's a phrase in Britain as well. Don't cry over it.
Not in Spain, funny enough. Right?
Oh, really? But it is.
Not in Catalan, at least.
Oh, well, it is in Colombia. But you know the concept, which is like something bad happens, and don't like beat yourself up about it too much. It's just some spilt milk. You might be. But I think what my advice to myself would be, don't cry over spilt milk, maybe agonize over something that didn't go well, but do investigate and do look at what went wrong and learn from it. And you can think positively about that. And I know we hear this a lot in kind of business, is about failing, etc. But I think that piece of advice, every time we have a customer interaction, every time I'm running a pitch, it's like, okay, how do we score? How do I score myself, first of all? How do we score the rest of the team? What could we have done differently? What could we have done better? I think it would be to create more of that in myself without thinking that, those moments when it didn't go well, it's just spilt milk. Don't worry, but let's learn from it.
Exactly. And it's like maybe like our instinct in some way would go to external factors, like, this client doesn't see things the right way, but I think that it's like a key thing in life, like to be able to feel more in control as well, to be able to say, okay, how could I have presented this better so that this client took a different approach to this, for example.
Exactly. I mean, that is so, my boss, Nicholas, who's he's our president and co-founder. That is very much the mindset that he sets within the organization. And it's, I feel like I'm kind of on that journey already, but it's, that's the advice I'd give my younger self.
Excellent. Well, Paul, it was a pleasure. And I'll leave, obviously, your profile in the show notes if anyone wants to contact you
Great stuff.
to get your expertise on retail media.
Happy to chat. I love this topic.
And I think you'll be seen. And since you can see us as well, you can see him at a lot of industry events in the UK.
Yeah.
Shop talk, etc.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
And thanks to our audience as well. And we'll see you in the next episode of the FMCG guys. Every Wednesday and every Saturday morning. Have a great one.
Content in this podcast episode is provided for general informational purposes only. By listening to our episode, you understand that no information contained in this episode should be construed as advice from Dwyer Partners SL, doing business as the FMCG guys, or the individual author, host, or guests, nor is it intended to be a substitute for research on any subject matter. Reference to any specific product or entity does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation by Dwyer Partners SL. The views expressed by guests are their own, and their appearance on the program does not imply an endorsement of them or any entity they represent. Dwyer Partners SL expressly disclaims any and all liability or responsibility for any direct, indirect, incidental, special, consequential, or other damages arising out of any individual's use of, reference to, or inability to use this podcast or the information we presented in this podcast.